What happens when you judge someone by half a sentence? You just don't lose context. You know what you lose? You lose the truth. And this week, one word kept just tapping me on the shoulder. You want to know what that word was? Context. And it all started with a conversation about Charlie Kirk. Now, before you tune me out, this isn't about politics. It's about honesty. It's about what happens when we twist people's words to fit our story. And it happens all the time, not just with Charlie Kirk. But let me tell you what happened. I was having a conversation with someone, and this person said to me, I respect that Charlie died for what he believed, but he thought a few gun deaths a year were worth it for the Second Amendment. And then he died by a gun anyway. And that landed hard. And so I pushed back just a little bit, and I said, you know what? Charlie wasn't talking about casually accepting gun deaths. He was talking about the right to bear arms as a safeguard if the government ever turned on its citizens. Now that right there is a very different point. This person looked at me, thought for a second, and said, no one buys guns for that reason. And you know what? That might be true for some people. And that's definitely this person's opinion, but it wasn't what Charlie said. And that right there is the problem. Because when we project our beliefs onto somebody else's words, we stop listening. And like I said, this goes way beyond Charlie. When opinions harden into judgments and judgments drive actions, we end up punishing people for things they never actually said. So you know what I did? I went digging. I read article after article, and I watched clips, full clips, not just the snippets. Over and over, I saw the same thing. Charlie's most controversial quotes were cut short. But here's the kicker. When you hear the whole quote, you still might disagree, but at least you have the context and can understand the intent. And that's clarity. When you take something out of context to prove your point, you're not being honest. You're actually being manipulating. And here's a rhetorical trick. You strip the nuance, you pump the outrage, you win the moment, but you know what you lose? You lose the truth. And that's not debate, that's propaganda. So here's my rule. If you can't make your case with the whole clip, the whole situation, or the whole statement, then guess what? You don't have a case. And if your point just falls apart, it just crumbles when you use the full quote, then your point is weak to begin with. So make sure you show the full question, you show the full answer, and you show what came next. And if you're recounting a story, then make sure that you share both sides as accurately as you can, as accurately as you remember. But realize this, if the meaning shifts, you either fix the claim or you just let it go. Let's talk about why some people strip away or ignore context. Here are a few reasons. One has to do with simplicity, because nuance is messy. Real conversations are complicated. They require time, they require patience, and they force us to sit with gray areas, which can be very uncomfortable. But you know what? Those sound bites are easy. A 7-word phrase travels a whole lot faster than a 7-minute explanation. Our brains crave short and tidy stories, so you chop off the edges. We simplify a person down to one sentence, even if it doesn't capture the whole truth. We're wired to want belonging, and belonging often means picking a side. That's why quotes tend to be stripped down into ammunition to use against somebody. It's not about understanding anymore. You know what it's about? It's about winning. And if someone says, my team, on their team says something controversial, then you'll end up cropping the context to protect them. But if somebody on the other team says something, then you'll crop the context to attack them. Either way, it's not about the truth. It's about applause for your side. And let's be honest, that feels good, but backlash? Now, that feels bad. Some people lean toward what feels safe inside their tribe, but here's the problem. Then you can't be trusted. When loyalty beats truth, credibility dies. 2 sets of rules, gentle for your side, but brutal for the other. There's a social agenda or signals agenda, not accuracy. And when people sense an agenda, you know what happens? They don't believe anything you say, even when you're right. That's not just rhetorical, it's psychological. When we go tribal, the brain shifts into this defense mode. We stop processing nuance and we start hunting for proof that our side is right. And it feels good in the moment, but it blinds us to accuracy. Fairness does the opposite. It actually slows you down. It re-engages this prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that weighs evidence and makes balanced judgments. You don't have to agree with someone to give them context. You just have to regulate the instinct to attack them. That's the real shift. And here's the commitment to hold yourself to. One standard for everyone. Whole quotes or no claim. State their best counterpoint before your conclusion. And if you break that, you know what's going to happen? People won't trust you, and they shouldn't. So how does this show up? When you show selective receipts, when you show only what helps your side, when you have moving goalposts, when the rules change depending on who's talking, when you're only looking for the applause, you chase the likes, not the clarity. And you know what happens to listening? It becomes weaponized because their words become your bullets. So before you post, before you comment, pause and run a self-check. Ask yourself, if the names were swapped, would you still feel the same way? If not, you know what's talking? Bias is talking. Make sure you verify the source. Watch a minute before and after and read the full exchange. Paraphrase their best point fairly out loud before you argue yours. And if you can't, guess what? You're not ready. And hold one standard. Ask the same questions of both sides. So what do you ask? You ask yourself, do you want accuracy or do you want to be right? And if the answer is you want to be right, then you know what? Wait. You can show the full context and still disagree. You don't have to spotlight only the line or the phrase that you don't like. Context doesn't equal agreement, it equals fairness. The third reason is this outrage machine, because outrage moves faster than accuracy. That's how the internet pays its bills. Platforms reward clicks and comments and watch time. You know what they don't reward? Carefulness. Creators chase reach, not reflection. And when attention becomes currency, anything that slows that scroll feels expensive. So you know what happens? The qualifiers get cut, the hesitations get trimmed, and the follow-up sentence totally disappears. What stays is the sharpest line, the hottest point, and the moment that lights up the nervous system. Anger and moral shock travel much faster and much further than nuance. Your brain helps it along with negativity bias and novelty bias and arousal that boosts memory and sharing. And that tiny jab beats a messy explanation. The logarithm isn't evil. The logarithm is simple. It amplifies what people engage with. People engage with heat. Outrage signals heat. Nuance signals work. Work loses. Creators feel that pressure. Thumbnails get louder. Titles get edgier. Clips get tighter. If a sentence softens the take, you know what? It gets axed. If adding context risks losing the audience, it stays out. Do that long enough, and you stop asking, is this fair? And you know what you start asking? Is this going to hold people's attention? Audiences feel the pull too. Posting the spiciest line earns status within a tribe. You look savvy, you look bold, you look aligned. Sharing the full context earns what? Silence. There's no dopamine hit, no applause, so there's incentives to keep pushing both sides toward that same cliff. Sharper, simpler, angrier. But you know what gets lost? The truth. Not because everybody lies, but because the system shaves off the parts that make the truth recognizable. Timelines, qualifiers, how the speaker corrected themselves, and what happened next. Context slows the scroll. Scripted quotes light it on fire. And you're not helpless here. As a viewer, you can add some friction. Watch the minute before, watch the minute after. Make sure you read and understand the full exchange. Ask what the speaker meant to do. And as a creator, show your work. Say, here is the full clip. These are the parts I don't agree with. Summarize the best counterpoint before your take. Make the clarifications. Look, you might lose a little speed, but you know what you're going to gain? Trust. Outrage is great at reach, but it's terrible at reality. And if you want credibility that lasts, choose the extra 20 seconds that context costs. So whether it's simplicity, whether it's this tribal pool, or the lure of likes and shares, the result is the same. The truth gets cropped. And once context disappears, you know what else disappears? fairness. I'm Blanca Cobb, a body language expert with a master's degree in psychology. If this message resonated with you, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to my channel so that way you get more breakdowns of psychology and body language as it relates to you and your life. And I'll see you in the next video.